Hello and welcome back to I'll Watch What They're Watching, where we're curious and adamant about cinema. I am one of your hosts. I'm Kyrie.
And I'm Adam.
And today we are doing another one of our Arts v Charts. We're going to be talking about 1984's Amadeus, kind of paired up against 2022's Tar. But we did kind of also want to talk a little bit about, we talked last week about how we're really heading into award season and lots of movies are coming out. So I know Adam and I both had a chance to watch a movie that has kind of been on critics and awards, the Academy's radar, I guess. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll dive into our Arts v Charts. So I mentioned this last week. I had the chance to go see Frankenstein last week, Guillermo del Toro's new film. I won't say too much about it because I know that it's, it will be released in about a week on Netflix, where that's where everyone's going to see it. My girlfriend declared it the worst movie she has ever seen.
This may play a conversation we're eventually going to get into, I think, in this podcast, just in general about movies we're talking about. Quite the strong reaction that I was surprised to hear from you when you texted me.
Yeah, same. Because I ended up actually quite liking it. Yeah, she had a hard time with it. The biggest reason, I think, because I was kind of talking with her about it and thinking about it afterwards, just, and this isn't a surprise if you know anything about the novel or about Frankenstein's monster in general, there was a decent amount of cruelty towards the creature.
Sure.
And she had a very difficult time with that. This movie paints the creature in a more innocent and, I think, sympathetic light than I've previously seen.
Totally understandable. By the way, I keep forgetting to tell you this. I read the first, 20 pages of the book.
Oh, okay.
I keep meaning to get back into it to read it.
I would say it's pretty different from not super different, but different from the book, different from the 1939 version. Yeah. I don't know. I did like it, and we can get into it more once you've seen it. And again, I don't want to spoil it for anyone. Lots I liked, a couple things I didn't. I do think it's going to, I would be surprised if it gets less than maybe 5 nominations at the Oscars. I think it's got a good shot at score. I think it's going to get 2, maybe 3 acting noms. I think it's got a shot at cinematography, production design. I would be very surprised if it doesn't win that one, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think Del Toro is going to get a nom, and I think it's going to get a Best Picture nom.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. There are lots of movies coming out that are jumping into the race. It's going to be a fun one. I'm excited about it, which, speaking of, the movie I saw this last week that is in all the conversations is Begonia. This is the latest from Yorgos Lanthimos. He essentially is just cranking out a movie. Yorgos and
Emma Stone, their little partnership.
Yeah, they've just been cranking out a movie a year pretty much, and usually it is getting Oscar buzz and Oscar nominated. This one will as well. I think it's not guaranteed, but I would be shocked if it didn't make it into Best Picture and lots of these other things. I think it is almost guaranteed Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone will get acting nominations. They are, as always, phenomenal. I've seen a lot of people especially praise Jesse Plemons, and I understand that praise after seeing the movie. But a lot of people kind of being like, Jesse Plemons is sort of this actor that whenever he shows up, he's always kind of this understated, oh yeah, this guy is really incredible. Lots of comparisons to Philip Seymour Hoffman, which is ironic because Jesse Plemons is playing Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in the newest Hunger Games that's coming up pretty soon. So I like that. And I watched Magnolia last night, which has Philip Seymour Hoffman. So I totally understand that comparison of just one of those guys, you show up, he's never really in the conversations of your Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Tom Hanks, Denzel Washington, kind of your big hitter actors, but then you watch them and you're like, oh yeah, no, they are kind of the best at what they're doing very, very often. Yeah. So Begonia, similar to you, I liked the experience of watching it. Wasn't necessarily my cup of tea all the way, which still kind of unpacking that. I think there's a lot that I liked and obviously had a good time watching it, and a lot of things that I tend to like. So I'm not sure why it didn't ultimately land as one of my favorites this year, but it's one that I can respect and can be if it has any award wins this season, I won't be mad. I'll just yeah, I get it, but it's not necessarily and it was Everything Everywhere All at Once year, I was like, if this doesn't win stuff, I'm going to actually burn the Academy Awards down to the ground. But if Begonia wins, I'm like, whatever, that's fine. So, yeah.
Fair
So
enough, fair enough.
there's some big things too that to discuss once you've seen it as well. Anyone that's seen the
Yeah.
movie knows. I did find this out after seeing it. This is actually somewhat of a remake. It's based on Little Green Planet, which is a Korean film from the
Oh,
early 2000s.
interesting.
So, again, general plot, two
Huh.
conspiracy theorists believe that Emma Stone, the CEO, is an alien, so they make a plan to kidnap her, and that's the plot. So, yeah,
10 out of 10.
it's, again, there's some things to talk about. Again, I had a fun time. If you are wanting to maybe go see this, just a trigger warning, like huge, big graphic stuff of violence.
Yeah, I do want to see Begonia this week. I'm going to try to get to it. I also kind of mentioned to you an animated movie at Cannes, Little Amelie, and there's another little tagline for it that I can't remember off the top of my head, but G Kids is taking over distribution in the States, and they historically have done like a lot of I think they may have done some Ghibli, but they do a lot of like Song of the Sea, Secret of Kells, typically like international animated films tends to be distributed by G Kids. So that
Okay.
makes me, kind of happy. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm really hoping to get that scene just because I'm not sure how long it's going to be in the theater circuit. Even being in, Denver, like Naja 2, seeing that with subtitles, it was only here for like 2 weeks. Like I had to go see it.
Yeah, no,
So
exactly.
we'll see on that one. But yeah, those are kind of the two that I'm hoping to really get to this week is Begonia and Little Amelie.
Yeah, let's get back into Amadeus. This was
Amadeus.
this was my arts versus charts pick. And right up front,
Yes,
I'm
it
gonna
was.
talk through it because I think now after seeing both movies, I think they really are more arts picks versus charts.
I can see that.
And if you've been listening to our arts versus charts episodes, just a quick summary, like your charts movie is just kind of your more blockbuster accessible movie that's there for your entertainment, and an arts movie is more approaching a subject from a sort of artistic approach, whether that's just from the camera work or the storytelling or really trying to get themes across or any other sort of creativity or artistic aspect to it. And just a comparison,
Yeah.
how there's room for both, and we'll talk a lot more about that in a little bit. But I think for me, Amadeus was one that my family owned growing up, and I just like, and even my wife Allie, she's seen it, and so I think just my inner circle, knowing that people have seen it, I'm like, oh, that's a charts pick, and people like it. That's a charts pick.
We'll say it's made a lot of money. Like Tar has not made the type of money that Amadeus did. It's also been 40 years since. And so I feel like now it's delved more into arts territory, but like it was a moneymaker when it came out. It was a big moneymaker.
Right, and I think the context of my inner circle is that I come from a band family. I met my wife in marching band, met Allie in marching band, so it's kind of like a little bit less of a representative sample to say that this is a widely known charts movie, but I even growing up and owning it, I don't remember sitting down and really watching it all the way through. I think it's one that I was probably bored or didn't want to watch whenever it was turned on. And so this was my first time I can really say that I sat down and watched it. And again, like I said, I don't know that arts versus charts is necessarily a perfect category to talk about these two movies, but I think it is a fun conversation regardless. And I think that
Agreed.
those themes will come out anyways of how we talk about these two movies. But which one you want to dive into first?
Yeah, I mean, since you already kind of brought up Amadeus, I'm fine starting there.
Perfect.
I've seen this once. It was back when I was still in college, but it was college round 2. So this was probably like 2017-ish. I think I watched it, 2017, 2018.
Okay.
Didn't remember much of it. I remember liking it at the time. I was a little bit cooler on it this time around. I
Oh, no
found
kidding.
myself, I mean, I texted you and I was like, this is so long. And it is. And to that point, maybe I couldn't find the theatrical cut of this. So I had to watch the director's cut, which is 3 hours long.
Oh, no kidding.
The theatrical cut is 2 hours and 40 minutes. I think I may have been happier with that.
No, okay, that's interesting. Because I wanted to watch the director's cut, but ended up having to watch the theatrical cut.
Oh,
So
I
kind
couldn't
of
find the
reverse.
theatrical cut.
Whenever this happens, I always try to look up like which one should you watch. So there's some that are very different, and like Donnie Darko is an example that people usually say don't do the director's cut because it does too
Blade
much
Runner
explaining.
too.
But this one, I think they said there's at least one scene that is kind of important that's not in the theatrical cut.
There's a scene where, and going into this, people,
Sure.
there's spoilers for these because we're diving deep in. There's a moment where, Mozart and his wife are not doing well financially, and his wife goes to Salieri with some of Mozart's work.
Right.
And is like, hey, here's his work. Will you consider him for this job? And Salieri goes, come back tonight alone. It's pretty heavily implied that he's going to have sex with her.
Okay.
And so she shows back up that evening, brings Mozart's work and is like, hey, I brought his work again in case you wanted to see it. Okay, you probably don't. And like Salieri just stands there and just stares at her the whole time. He never says anything. And she's like, okay, I guess that's not really why I'm here. And she starts to undress. And as she's taken her top off, she's down to like her, some bloomers and like a slip. And Salieri rings a bell and a butler comes in. And Salieri goes, please escort her out, and leaves.
Yeah, that's not in the theatrical cut.
Okay, that's the only thing, because I was like, there's not really any
Mhm.
and then that was what came to me, that I was like, I'll bet that's the scene, because I do think that now that you say that, I do think that is kind of, I didn't remember it, and watching it, I was just like, that's almost worse than if he'd slept with her. Like, he humiliated her. I don't know, it's an interesting scene.
Yeah, no, it gives a little bit more context, or sort of, it's an interesting movie.
Yeah, let's get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty before we dive in. So, Amadeus came out in 1984, directed by Milos Forman. A writer is Peter Shaffer, who wrote the stage play, and that kind of was really huge, which is why the movie was made. Stars F. Murray Abraham and Tom Hulce as Salieri and Mozart, respectively. Won 8 of its 11 nominated Oscars. It was very, very, again, stage play was hugely popular, like Hamilton status. And so then they decided to make a movie. And so the movie is just kind of the story of Mozart through the lens of Salieri, who was another composer / rival of Mozart at that time. And that's more or less what it is.
Yeah, and I think what's an important kind of overall theme is Salieri is just kind of this regular guy as far as writing music and operas and plays. Just like, it's his career, it's his profession. He worked very hard to do it, and he kind of goes into that a little bit. And then Mozart is this prodigy, and so he's one of the few that like understands how great Mozart really is. But then he also kind of takes this out as a sign that God is like chosen him, even though Mozart is, not worthy of it, and he doesn't really do it the quote unquote right way. And so Salieri sees this as a direct attack from God himself, and so he essentially talks about, I'm gonna go against God. I'm gonna fight God because he is fighting me.
Which I think is that's such an interesting thing, because as I was watching this, because I kind of remembered the idea that Salieri pledged himself to God in the hopes that God would bless his musical career and ability. And for a long time, he thought he did. He became court composer. He went to Vienna. He was like, oh, all these things are falling in place. God has accepted my offer, my sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, then he meets Mozart, who is flamboyant, who is sexually promiscuous, who has no sense of decorum. He's the worst. But he is a genius. And that's kind of when Salieri starts to really go mad. And I find it so interesting that rather than say, okay, well, rather than becoming an atheist, rather than saying, oh, okay, well, God must not be real if this is not working out, he instead is like, no, I will wage war on God.
Yeah, no, it's a
And
great.
it's so interesting because every time he does something to Mozart too, he doesn't frame it in as like I'm screwing over Mozart. He's like, no, I'm screwing over God. I'm doing this not so that Mozart will fail, but so that I will beat God at this game.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say this is not a traditional biopic in the sense that it's like really historically accurate and detailed,
Right.
and it's taking a lot of elements that are true or like close to true. Like Mozart was kind of crazy at the time. So it takes some of these like glimpses of truth and then really has this great idea of a movie. And I've even read like Salieri and Mozart weren't even really rivals, but it takes this idea of mediocrity to, or even just, normalcy to genius. And how does that play out? And what does that do to somebody? And it's, again, kind of growing up in a band family and doing band. As I'm watching this, I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, I totally kind of know that feeling as far as I was a drummer and I worked reasonably hard. Like I would say I have some from my family just being there. I think there's some natural talent there.
Yeah.
But there was this one kid that he was in choir and he was in band and he was all these different things. And we're really good friends, by the way. Like I'm not his mortal enemy. But I always had this thought because he would come and he would do percussion and he was always incredible at it. I always had this feeling of, if you just focused on percussion and put in the type of work that I tried to do with these drum lessons and all these different things, you would be incredible. And ironically enough, he did kind of focus himself that way and he was really good. But it's just kind of an interesting thing when you are in something like that. It can be sports too, or anything, and you can see just like natural talent and have the perspective of the work that you've done to get somewhere versus someone else and the work or lack of work that they've done and just the natural talent that's taken them someplace. And that does things. You have thoughts in your head, things that you just feel. And so then when you base your life off of this thing and you bring God or religion or your belief system into that, and then it doesn't go the way you expect it, how do you respond? It's world shattering.
I think you make a good point because it's something that I kept thinking throughout the whole thing was just kind of like, what is success? And I guess what would be better? Because, for example, Mozart, not appreciated in his own time. Now he's a household name. But like I don't know that he had like a quote good life.
Sure.
Like he was constantly in debt. He, by the end was both mentally and physically ill. I don't know that he was, his wife was happy. Whereas you have Salieri, who very well off. He, the emperor declared his opera the greatest opera ever made, and now no one really knows him or his tunes or his music. And I think that that's really, like, I don't know. For me, I've just been kind of mulling over, like, what defines success, and I guess, like, which one is better, because Mozart has left a legacy, but he never got that recognition during his life.
Yeah, that is fantastic. I think this is something that comes up a lot in media. It's essentially the plot of Banshees of Inisherin, which came out a few years ago. But yeah, it's this really kind of tricky thing. And I think too, if anyone that follows our Instagram, eventually we're going to do some Tom Cruise episodes. We're going to watch through a lot of his filmography.
Yeah.
And I keep having this thought that, like, I think to be the greatest or to be at that next level of genius of something, you almost have to take a step back from some of the normalcy of what life looks like. And is that really worth it? Whiplash, Black Swan, again, a lot of art has and media has tried kind of depict this and like what, and we'll talk about how that sort of collapses in Tar as well. And it's just kind of this, it's a tough thing. I don't know what the right answer is, but like you have to be a little
Yeah,
bit crazy to be Tom Cruise. You have to be a little bit
right.
crazy to be Mozart. And I don't think that, if you take a step back and sort of live a normal life, I don't think you're ever going to get to having that like world defining art, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
I
know,
think it does.
like there's things that can happen, there's good people, there's things that come out, but like I don't know, it's just a weird thing. There's so much genius that you have to be a little bit, some of these other things in your life are going to take a back seat for you to really push that forward.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I think I don't know, I was listening to another podcast where they were talking a little bit about Amadeus. And do you want to know another movie where some of his music does come into play a little bit?
Oh, sure.
It's actually in Iron Man.
Okay.
It's in the first one. It's when Obadiah is playing a piano piece, and Tony walks in and he goes, hey, how'd the meeting go? And he sees the box of pizzas and he's like, oh, that bad, huh? And Obadiah's like, just because I brought pizza doesn't mean it went bad. Kind of near the end. And it's Obadiah. It's shortly before I think Obadiah kind of reveals himself.
Okay.
And I thought that was very interesting that Obadiah is the one playing Salieri's music.
Huh.
Because it's kind of that same thing. You have this, Tony Stark he's the Mozart. He's the genius. He can do, I think there's even that scene where Obadiah at one point, talks to some people and he goes, Tony Stark built this in a cave with a bunch of scraps. And the guy goes, well, I'm sorry, but I'm not Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I found that really interesting. I was like, ooh, that's a good way to kind of play in some of Salieri's music is like, Obadiah is the one, like, I wouldn't even say that Salieri, he says that he's mediocre. I don't even know that he's mediocre. I think he's good. He's just not genius.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the most sort of magical scenes, I think, is when they're waiting for Mozart to come in and the royalty is like learning the piece that Salieri composed for Mozart to come in, this little march,
Yes.
and Mozart comes in and he's like, oh, I can play it for you back. I can, and he goes and he starts like riffing on it and makes it infinitely better. And everyone's just sitting there. And Salieri's like, the first time of him being like, I don't know how to handle this because he is clearly more talented than me.
Yes.
But I've worked to get here and it's not fair. It's just not fair. Like how I want to be good. I want to have this legacy. I just don't, like it's just.
Yeah, because Mozart's not even trying to be an a-hole in that scene either. He starts playing it and then he's like, huh, what if we do a little something here? And he's like, oh, what if we did here? And he goes, that's better, isn't it? And it's this idea that, like, Salieri's been slaving over this little piece of music for probably, hours. And Mozart spends 2 minutes behind a piano and can not only replicate it exactly, but improves upon it. Like, what a slap in the face.
And I think the same thing, we'll get to Tar more in depth, but there's a very similar scene in Tar. I'm not sure if you caught, but it's when she has her piece out and that the young girl comes over to practice, sees it. Yes. And she goes and she like, well, what if you change it right here? And in that scene, it's more played off of like, you have Tar who has all this experience and this knowledge and has been working on this, forever, trying to get this absolutely perfect. And then for someone to come in and kind of reduce your art to this simple, oh, well, this sounds better if you just do this. And it's, again, It kind of goes back to like, well, no, that's my art. That's what I've done. And so I can understand Salieri's feeling of like, that is my creation. And they came in and sort of said, no, this is not as good as it could be. And that's a really hard thing to grapple with.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'd agree. I think that's exactly on point because he even talks about how, he was like, I made sure that Don Giovanni only played 5 times, but he went and saw it every single night.
I mentioned it earlier, but it's so fascinating that the movie portrays Salieri as really the only one that really gets it. He's the only one that's really
Yeah.
like, this guy is like genius beyond words. And so that's a fun little wrinkle of him being able to observe that.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, I mean, really, when we can move on to Tar, but overall, yeah, really interesting kind of character study. Like I said, some of my biggest critiques, I thought it was too long.
Sure.
And that's almost always my complaint when a movie's longer than 2 hours is I'm just like, why? Why is it like this? Why is it taking up so much time? And that's how I felt with this one too. I just found my attention kind of waning a few times. I was just like, there's so much going on and this is 3 freaking hours long. Overall, still liked it. Like I said, I think it's an interesting character study. I think it offers just a lot of really cool points to kind of have in the conversation. So I did land on 4 stars for this one.
Yeah, I'm similar there. I think when you look back at the Oscars, you mentioned they won 8. F. Murray Abraham for his portrayal of Salieri won Best Actor, and I think a lot of people look at that as one of the best acting performances we've seen in film history. Honestly, it's just one of those portrayals that you have to watch to be able to really kind of look into, sort of like we've talked about, the complexity of these themes coming out. I think it's, when he's composing Requiem and Salieri is there, like, slow down, like, let me write this. And it's just like flowing out of Mozart and it's playing in the background of them playing. And everyone knows this song, Requiem. It's just one that plays, like a Target commercial will play it for some reason, but it's this really powerful piece, right? Like, this is, and just the history behind it a little bit, and seeing that there, plus just the visual imagery too of Mozart's father, which we haven't talked about at all, but just like the mask and him showing up. And I'm shocked that isn't like a Halloween costume that we see all the time. Like, I'm sure there's people that do it, but I'm surprised it's not like
That's pretty terrifying.
Yeah, like, I feel like it's one of those ones like Ghostface that you would think would be like a standard every year you'll see those, but it's really great.
Yeah.
It's a little spooky, and you can see kind of the, again, back to the genius conversation and the relationships and how you do it, and you sacrifice certain things. And yeah, it's a fun character study and fun way to, again, it's not probably very accurate, but it takes on some themes and kind of expands on those in some really interesting ways. So that is Amadeus.
Star rating for you?
I think I'm at a 4 as well. We'll get a little bit more, I think, into this star rating conversation as we keep teasing, but Kyrie texted me some things that they wanted to talk through at some point.
I have some thoughts that I think, play into this idea of art. So we can kind of talk about Tar, and then
but I'm glad
kind of go into
I'm glad we're going to
thoughts.
talk about it, because these last few weeks, I've watched a lot of movies, and there was a period when I watched like 10 movies, and I didn't rate a single one. And then finally I was like, okay, I better go and rate all these. And I don't know, I have complicated feelings about rating these days. And so I think it'll kind of play into this conversation that Kyrie's been thinking about for a little bit. But anyways, Tar came out just a few years ago in 2022. It is directed and written by Todd Field. And this was the first movie he's directed in like 20 years.
Yeah.
It's starring Cate Blanchett as Tar.
Yes.
And we love Cate Blanchett.
So
and I think this is one of those movies that it was nominated for Best Picture in 2023, and I think anyone that saw it was like, oh, that was a really good movie. And I think what makes it so good is that it feels like Amadeus in some ways, where it's like you're watching this person, Tar, who feels very real and feels like this is a real story happening. And I listened to an interview from Todd Field, and he said that this is a character that he's had in the back of his mind for like 20 years of this Tar character.
Oh, dang.
And it was in during the pandemic when he really started writing this fully and kind of brought Tar to life. And again, he talks about it as like he can't believe that a studio let him do it. He can't believe that he was able to make the movie that he did. And I think it's a really interesting movie. Essentially, it follows this director, Lydia Tarr, who it's contemporary, so it's modern day. You start with this really long New Yorker interview. It's just this very carefully crafted character. You can see that Tar very well like composes herself to be this very powerful person in the world of contemporary classical music. And sort of the catalyst is that she's about to complete the cycle, which I guess is this thing where you conduct all 5 of Mahler's symphonies.
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't able to complete it because of the pandemic, but they have the next one scheduled and it's going to be this big deal. And so then it just kind of follows her and sort of her kind of this relationship or this persona that she created. And it kind of all starts crumbling down. And I'm not great at describing plots of movies. I tend to just ramble. But yeah, this movie really is kind of just this character study on Tar and sort of the relationships to power and greatness and how that sort of, again, eventually crumbles.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that too in this particular story, I think this focuses a lot on just kind of the idea, like, does being a good person matter? And like,
right.
I think there's some commentary on cancel culture too. I think in both of those questions, Todd Field doesn't really seem to take a stance.
Mm-hmm.
Which I find honestly kind of interesting. I feel like it's more about inviting this conversation than about saying definitively one way or the other. I remember when I first saw this, I was like, I think that's some interesting commentary on cancel culture. I think it's more than that, but I think that has something to do with it. Because I've said before on the podcast, I don't really care much for cancel culture. I think negating every good thing that someone does can sometimes do more harm than good.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, it's interesting watching this. You can see that Cate Blanchett's character, Lydia Tarr, was basically a serial adulterer, was a grooming young women. And when, one didn't go quite right with one young woman, she essentially shut her out of the music business to the point where she was driven to suicide. You see another situation where she was kind of grooming her assistant and same thing, but then she was so afraid of accusations that she didn't give her assistant, the role, the career promotion that she wanted. So that assistant sort of rage quit and then was actively legally fighting against her. Just overall so interesting. And yeah, you see her being literally, at the top of her game. Interviews, she is so wildly successful. To at the end, spoiler alert, she is conducting music for like a friggin' Monster Hunter video game like event, which I find so interesting because she puts those headphones on, which also says like she was being like someone was directing her how to properly conduct that music. And so, at the beginning she talks about how a conductor is more than just a human metronome and this is why, or okay, yeah, maybe they are a human metronome, but this is why it's important. And she basically is reduced to that. She is a machine stand-in in that final scene.
And I think where Todd Field, you put it perfectly, that he presents so many really good questions about, like you said, about what it means to be a powerful person that is talented and what their actions, what they're held accountable to and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
But I think where he makes a very clear point, and I saw this pointed out, and I wrote it down initially, and that it's this idea that I think it's important not to lose the like collectiveness of working together on something. You kind of
Right.
see like a symphony, a conductor, yes, is important, especially in a rehearsal type setting and all these different things. But at that level, really, once you start a piece, I don't know how much a conductor really, like, kind of like in the interview they're talking about, I don't know how much it really plays into it, except, managing time and making sure people are together. But what Todd Field does make very clear is everyone and every part is important. And he does something very,
Yeah.
very clever to do this, is the movie actually starts with the credits for all the technical people involved in the movie.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of like, they're always shoved at the back. They're always kind of forgotten. And he's kind of putting them front and center to say, these
Mm-hmm.
are the people that made this movie and made this movie possible and brought it all
Yes.
together. And it's in direct contrast to the way that Lydia Tarr has kind of manages people throughout the movie and uses them in varying degrees to achieve her goals at the end.
Yes. And like I said, I feel like Todd Field is really interested in kind of presenting these questions and not taking a stance. Is this idea of like, did Lydia deserve all these things that happened to her? Did she not? Because one of my very favorite scenes is when she's guest teaching that class at Juilliard.
Yeah, it's a fantastic scene.
Oh, it's so good. And she's talking to, there's this character named Max who is this, non-binary person of color, and Max kind of talks, how they're like, well, I don't really care for Bach because Bach is misogynistic and, all these horrible things. And Lydia Tarr is kind of like, who the heck cares? Look at his music. Like, his music does all of these things. Why do we care who Bach was? Fun fact, we don't. We don't care about him. We care about his music. And his music is doing all of these really cool and interesting things. And Max is like, well, but he's still, I still don't like him, so I'm not interested in his music. And Lydia's basically like, well, then on that standpoint, you shouldn't care about anyone. Because you're so concerned about your own identity politics than what's actually there. And watching that, I'm honestly still not sure where I land on that opinion. Because part of me is like, I think I don't know. It's separating the art from the artist. And I don't quite know where I land on it.
Yeah, so again, in this interview where he talks about this and he talks about this specific scene, and he makes the point, number one, that there's this power dynamic and that Lydia's in charge this entire conversation. You can tell that Max is very uncomfortable and that he keeps getting progressively more uncomfortable, but he still submits because that's the power dynamic is still there until eventually he breaks and he has to leave. But what he says that I find so fascinating is he says, Lydia is Max. 30 years ago, that is exactly who she would have been because she was a woman in this very white male-dominated field, but she is uncomfortable defining herself by being a lesbian woman that is this prolific conductor. She wants to be considered for herself and for what she's accomplished without having those labels attached to her. And so it's kind of she's a very complex person, and I think very deliberately, through the course of the movie, you kind of think bad, like she is doing a lot of bad things, but I think there are glimpses of like her being this complete person that is trying to break some of these norms or some of these things. And so in that moment, she's trying to do what was done for her for this kid, but doing it in a way where she now has the power. And so she's trying to force that now onto him and not taking sort of those complexities. And she's very resistant to deal with those complexities of the situations that had brought her to where she is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's spot on. Because I think, again, as I was watching it, because we have to kind of do that nowadays, are we separating the art from the artist? Can we still, because I'm the type of movie that I'm like, well, if one person gets canceled, that doesn't mean I'm canceling every single person in that movie. I shouldn't not support it because of one bad actor or something like that.
Yeah, it's tough.
And I think this kind of plays into, I don't know, what I said, where I was like, hey, I have a mini rant that I think I want to talk through. So this might come out kind of messy just because I'm trying to figure out exactly where I even stand on this. Where I personally have gone through phases, in movie watching and in my kind of, film critic career, where growing up, and I would say the casual moviegoer is like this, where we're not really equipped to say if a movie is bad or good, but depending on if we liked it or not, we say it's bad or good.
Right.
So it's really easy to be like, oh, that movie was mid. And it's like, oh, it's because you didn't like it very much. And I feel like that's the thing is you can watch a movie and I feel like it's very easy to just be like, oh, that movie was good because you liked it. No, that movie was bad because you didn't. And as I've gotten more kind of into the world of cinema and moviegoers and writing about cinema and analysis and all that, I think that it's come out more where I've been like, ooh, the quality of movies is more objective. I think you can say if a cinematographer actually is talented or not, is good or not. I think you can label, acting in a movie. So I feel like there have been movies where I'm like, I didn't like it, but I do think it was a good film. Or, I think this movie isn't very good, but I liked it. And I'm kind of sitting at this point now where I'm like, sometimes it's very easy if a movie made you feel uncomfortable or if you didn't like it to be like, well, that movie's bad. That movie sucks. I didn't like that movie. And that's fine. You don't have to like a movie, but like sometimes not every movie's purpose is to entertain. Not every movie's purpose is to give you good feelings. And so sometimes like what is appealing about the movie is either the message or the art or like if Grave of the Fireflies, for example. Grave of the Fireflies is not a movie that is meant to make you feel good about things. You finish and you're sad. And if you're not, then you're a sociopath. like you finish Grave of the Fireflies and it's meant to just sort of like suck happiness out of you. Because it's making a statement and it's doing so in a beautiful way where it's really, really artistic as well. But I'm almost wondering, I was thinking about this as I'm like, am I devaluing enjoyment and entertainment? Because I think I'm kind of at a point where I'm like, I want to, and maybe this is just, I don't know, my quarter life crisis, or maybe just because of the state of the world right now, where I'm like, I don't care if K-pop Demon Hunters is pretentious or not. It's freaking fun. Like, I had fun watching it, and it brought me joy, and it makes me smile, and it makes me happy. And like, doesn't that have value? Or shouldn't that have value?
Yeah, I think if I'm hearing you right, really it's kind of this question back to these episodes a little bit, arts versus charts, right? There is a clear value in certain movies that you watch. A good litmus test, I think, is honestly Oscar nominated movies. You start watching more and more of the movies that come out every award season, and you start to notice like, oh, this does look really good. Like the difference of watching this movie compared to watching like a Netflix original Christmas movie are very different when you kind of look at them back to back or look at them in context if you're watching a lot of these different movies compared to a Netflix Christmas movie, right? And so
Right.
I think where the struggle's coming for us doing this podcast or people that are very interested in film as this art form is a lot of people show up for movies that are entertaining, that are sometimes lacking some of these really careful, fine attention to detail aspects of
Right.
movie making. And going back to Tar a little bit, it is kind of this, I love this part of the end commentary too, of she is now conducting a video game music, where earlier in the film, that would be something that she would see as beneath her. But how many people are
Yes.
listening to classical music today versus how many people are playing video games and loving the music that is in video games? And so in some ways,
Yes.
it's sort of this, how do you adapt to getting art out of the art itself versus appealing to sort of this general mass desire to be comforted, to be entertained? And I think that's where I think what I'm hearing from you is, how do you balance that? And how do you, when something seems to be critically not looked on in a favorable light, but you had a good time with that, how do you then reconcile that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I guess where I'm standing is, I think there are like two journeys that I've gone through, or, two experiences I had where previously I was like, I liked a movie or I didn't. And then I think I overcorrected when I started kind of entering more of the pretentious film mindset, where I
Sure.
was like, well, no, this And is
Right.
it good or is it not? Well, oh, it gave me the warm fuzzies. And I was just kind of like, well, who cares? What was it? Is it evoking emotion? What is it doing?
Sure,
And
sure.
now I'm just kind of like, well, if something made you happy, it did evoke emotion. It doesn't have to be, because there are movies that I watch that I've had people be like, that's boring as hell. And
Sure.
I've genuinely been like, I don't think that's boring at all. But I also think there's other times where I watch a movie and I'm like, yeah, it's a little boring, for sure. But I don't want to say that because, all the film critics are like, oh, well, no, it's a masterpiece. And I'm like, I don't care. It's 3 hours long and it's boring. And again, just going back to the K-pop Demon Hunters, or even like the Super Mario Bros. Film that came out last year. Or, I mean, we talked about this with Wicked. I am like determined to be grumpy about Wicked. And when I really look at it, I'm like, why? You
Mm-hmm.
love Wicked. It's my favorite Broadway musical. I saw it in London. I loved it. They got people who can actually sing to be in this, unlike things, like Les Mis. They got people who can sing. They have people who can dance. They got John Woo, who has directed musicals, movie musicals, and different musical type films. And everyone loved it. Yeah, I'm probably gonna think it's too long, but why am I being so damn grumpy about it? And again, I'm looking at me just being like, what is wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
You will watch it and you will probably get a kick out of it. Why are you so determined to be grumpy about this thing?
Yeah, I don't, and I defending the art side of it a little bit. I think part of that comes from a place of, expecting or wanting these big, Wicked was going to be big no matter what. So
Right.
we should expect to have the art style craft at the top of its game too. And I think
Agreed.
most people that are quote unquote on the pretentious art side, the main criticism of Wicked is that the cinematography and color grading is not good. And I think the
Right.
best illustration that I've seen of this, if you look this up, a lot of it is very practical. They built a lot of the sets and they built it very, very good, but then it's filmed in a way that you don't have to worry as much about the lighting of a scene. And I think
Mm,
that's where there's some frustration of some of these bigger budget entertainment, more focused movies, is that it seems like at times they're taking shortcuts to that people don't
okay.
necessarily like if you saw it back and forth or like back to back, I mean, of a Wicked with really good lighting and color and vibrancy versus what we have right now, I think you would notice and you'd be like, oh yeah, that does look better. It would be better if it had that. But the way it is now, I don't know if that's something you notice as much just because it's kind of what you're seeing a lot of these days. So I think that is where this conversation is needed in a way that it's like, yes, there should be a place to just be entertained and that's good. But it's frustrating when you can see that they are taking shortcuts to what could make it better. But that doesn't mean that it's bad, doesn't mean that people that like it are bad.
Yeah, I think where I'm standing is I think I haven't been giving likability enough credit. Because
Sure.
I do think there's a way to look at movies more objectively. There are movies that I'm like, I think that's a good film. I hated it with every fiber of my being. And then I think there's a way of being like, there are movies that I know are hot trash and I really, really love. G.I. Joe is one of them. That movie is
Sure.
so bad. I love it. I think in regards to my ratings, I have not been giving likability and how much I enjoyed it enough credit.
Okay.
To be completely honest. I think that's kind of where I'm at with this. And I'm like, if that makes me a populist, that makes me less of a movie critic, then I think I'm kind of like, so be it. I'd rather be more authentic with it because I do think there is something to that. I've been doing that, I think, a little bit. I gave Superman a higher rating than I think, objectively. I was like, this is probably 3.5 or 4 star. I was like, I don't care, 4.5. I loved it. And I guess I think that's just kind of where I'm standing is I want to be more authentic to how I actually feel about a movie. And I do want to be able to look at the objective points and be like, that's really impressive. That's really cool. Tar. I'm like, yeah, everything that they did was really well done. I never expected to go back to this movie again. And I only did it for this podcast, and I don't think I'll ever touch it again.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I hate it, not because I didn't like it. I just am kind of like, yeah, it's there. it's not something that, like, fills me with joy, and I want movies to do kind of what we said with Star Wars, where, like, I want Star Wars to be fun, and I do think that, fun is subjective, and that is something to take into account. And
Yeah.
movies, there's an aspect of movies that are objective, and there's some subjectivity to it, but I think if a movie makes someone happy, if a movie brings some joy into the world, like, pop culture has the ability to unite people, and, like, whether you're conservative, liberal, male, female, or anywhere in between, the amount of people that love K-pop Demon Hunters is crazy. And with how divisive the world is right now, it is crazy that this silly little movie has brought people together in a way that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, we all love K-pop Demon Hunters.
Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how many people like this movie.
I think this conversation, again, is something I've been wrestling with, not in like a sleepless nights, life is hard type of wrestle way, but in a way that I'm like, I don't know how to deal with this. Is I have buckets of movies that are, I love these movies, they make me happy, I'm going to rate them high, but then I have these movies that I'm like, I wasn't as entertained, or it wasn't like my favorite watching experience, but I can recognize that that was like masterful artwork and display. And I think a great example is High and Low that we talked about a few weeks ago. That is a movie that I'm like, by all objective accounts, that is basically a perfect movie for the history of film when it came out, the way that it does a lot of things. But when I watched it, which again, the state of mind when you watch something, I watched it late at night and was kind of tired, always plays into effect as well. And you mentioned a movie that you saw in theaters as we were texting this week, and like that theater experience was so special. That movie's always going to be really high for you, and so you're bringing all these things in. So then I'm left with like, how do I rate this silly movie I love and this movie I know is a masterpiece but didn't have as much fun with? And maybe its ratings are just stupid, and we should just have fun with them just because they're just this silly little thing. And we've talked about episodes we'll do with ratings to maybe poke fun at that a little bit. Yeah, so it's a good conversation. It's something worthwhile, and I think that like most things, there is a balance. You shouldn't discount people that are having fun with something. You shouldn't discount people that say, this technically should be better because of XYZ, and you just kind of work with what we've got and hope that it keeps being better and we avoid AI.
There you go. Yeah, and I think, again, talking through this is just kind of me talking through what I've been mulling over the past, like, couple weeks. And I don't know that I even have, like, a real answer to any of this either. I just kind of wanted to talk it out because this seemed like it related to this kind of arts versus chart thing. Because I have thought about throwing out ratings altogether, and I don't want to do that because I do want to be an aspiring critic, and unfortunately, critics have to give a rating to things. I'm still kind of mulling over exactly where I stand on it. I think that I want to give more value to a movie that I found fun and I found happy. And again, maybe it is just the state of the world right now is making me a little crazy. And so if this silly little movie about some K-pop singers who also happen to be demon hunters makes me smile, then I'm like, 5 stars. 10 out of 10, loved it. Because you made me smile and everything else is on fire. I
will also say that sometimes the saddest movie, for whatever reason, I really, really like, and like being in my feelings a little bit.
No, and again, like, Grave of the Fireflies is a masterpiece, and I gave it 5 stars, and I don't foresee that ever changing. I think I am just, so maybe that's it, I don't know, I think I'm willing to give more merit to a movie if it made me happy. Even if it's not, like, quote-unquote good. Even if it's not the type of quality that I want. Because there are groups of people who are looking at big popular movies and going, oh, it's not that good. Oh, it's for the masses. Oh, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, if it made me happy, then who cares? So, I don't know. I think that's where I'm kind of standing with things, and this could change. But I just think that, again, like with Amadeus, I'm like, oh, it's really well made and everyone loves it. So, okay, I guess I'll give it 4 stars. I think my enjoyability of it was like a 3.
Sure.
And I'm like, I don't know, maybe 4 is me being a little harsher on it because I have almost everyone that I'm on Letterboxd with gave it 5 stars. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
well, 4 then, because I didn't like it that much. I don't know. Like I said, I don't have an answer. Maybe, I mean, I would love if people could, talk about this maybe in the comments on the episode or something, because I don't have an answer, and I don't even know exactly where I land on it, other than I think that if a movie brings joy and happiness, I think that that's a good thing. And I think I want to be a little bit more authentic with my ratings, where I think previously I have almost taken my feelings out of it and been like, well, how good is this movie? And I'm like, no, I think feelings are part of it. I think feelings are a big part of art. They're a big part, but also just like, if someone loves a movie, who am I to say that that's a bad thing? And so if I liked it, I want to be more authentic with that. And if I didn't, I want to be like, hey, yeah, sure, this movie did all the right things. I did not like it. It was not fun. If you want to watch 3 hours of composers being petty, then go ahead. I don't.
But I think you even said you're at a 3, but you recognize all the technical brilliance of basic perfection, and that you can kind of balance those two scores to get you at a 4. And I think that's an authentic place to be, to say, I recognize the technical brilliance of this, but it just wasn't my jam. That's kind of how I literally said that in my Begonia review. I said, yeah, I mean, I get it. I understand. I won't be mad again, like I said earlier, if this wins stuff, but wasn't necessarily my jam. Not going to be at the top of my list at the end of the year, but it's okay. I get it. So I don't know. Again, I don't think we're trying to say these are the right answers, but certainly things we're thinking about. And yeah, certainly things we're thinking about, and fun conversation regardless. It's been good. So anyways, what's your rating of Tar?
Good. Yeah, so this one also 4 stars.
Yeah, that's about what I...
Like, I'm not rushing to see it again, but...
When I originally watched it, I was at 4 stars, so I think I'm, still there. I do really like watching it, though, I'll say. This one does make me, like, I'm excited to watch this. And I made Allie watch it, too, and I think she had a good time as well, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, like I said, I don't have any answers on that. I will continue to give star ratings and reviews, but I think that's something interesting to kind of mull over. So, Adam, what are we watching?
Great question as always. If you want to pay attention, I think we'll keep going a little bit on this ratings conversation. So if you want to look, our Letterboxd are posted on Instagram, and on wherever you can find these, we post our Letterboxd profiles. Look at what, we rate certain movies, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about that. We may also be doing a top 5 related to fall or Thanksgiving or whatever. Oh, and actually, we're going to change those to top 3s, just FYI, quick administrative note.
Oh, yeah.
I think in 2 weeks, we will try to tackle Obi-Wan. We're both pretty busy these days, so if we pass it on, don't get mad at us, but those types of things. And then, again, for the next few months, we are watching Ghibli, and we are watching Tom Cruise.
Yes.
So everyone should participate. Watch Ghibli, watch Tom Cruise, and we will talk.
And I know Adam, I will be watching mine mostly in order, but I have seen some, but I know Adam is really kind of going start to finish. So it's been really interesting, kind of the ones that you've really liked and the ones that I've really liked. Yeah, Ghibli's a fun one to dive into, and Tom Cruise as well has a varied filmography. We both got to watch Vanilla Sky this week, which was...
I've had so many thoughts on both Ghibli and Cruise's careers. It's going to be so fun. We'll probably pull a couple episodes out of it. Just I think there'll be so much to talk about. But as always, appreciate everyone that likes, subscribes, listen, share this with people, leave a comment, review, do whatever you can to help support us. We appreciate it. This is something we love doing, just chatting. Even if it was just us chatting, I think we'd still do it. So appreciate anyone that is listening. And with that, we'll see you next time.
See ya.